All right, so we're in Willamette Valley, as they call it over here in Oregon, and this is our first stop. It's Solana Vineyards, and kind of beautiful over there. We're here, this is October the 11th, I believe, so the fall colors are just coming in. That's the tasting room. There's a lot there with some vineyards, and there's more over there. And let's go check it out to see what's this place all about. Okay, so this is the inside of their tasting room, and here we go. This beautiful patio out here. It's a beautiful view. See if I can walk out there. That's great. Yeah, it's a pretty nice property.
I'm Solana, nice to meet you. And yeah, this is our 2023 Willamette Valley Rosé. Our rosé is a little bit different in comparison to most rosés that you may have had throughout the valley. And the reason why is because my father, who is a Burgundian and Bordeaux style winemaker, actually hates rosé. He doesn't like it at all, and Bordeaux and Burgundy are very strict in how they make rosé. And specifically, I actually found at one point, because my mom was drinking a Chardonnay and I was drinking a Bordeaux rosé, and what made me realize it was I accidentally reached for my mom's Chardonnay instead of my rosé, and she was like, no, Selena, that's your rosé. And I was like, what? Oh, that's right. Yeah, the colors are so close and similar together that it can only be seen just barely by the slightest shift of the glass, basically. So that's kind of why my father is very strict about how he makes his rosé, but also in the sense he's kind of leaned into the Wild West mentality that we as Americans have when we make rosé. Traditionally out here we use Pinot Noir grapes that are crushed, fermented with skin contact for 10 to 12 hours at longest, honestly. And then you press out all the rest of the juice, stick that juice back into a stainless steel tank, let it ferment the rest of the way, and it creates a super beautiful strawberry watermelon punch in the face. But my dad doesn't like that. He likes wine that has a little bit more dynamicism, a little bit more body to it, something that's a little bit more interesting. And so instead, what he decided to do was actually create a blend. This is one of the only blends that we ever make in the Willamette Valley for our tier of wine anyway. And so this wine is actually made with Pinot Blanc, Riesling, and Gewürztraminer. Yeah, a lot of different grape varietals, and most of them are German, actually. His grandmother was actually German, so that's a little homage to that. But also the reason why we use German grape varietals is because the Gewürztraminer tends to have a little bit of that like kind of greener, bell peppery sort of like spiciness to it, but a super beautiful nose, which you can probably pick up in the glass, versus the Riesling tends to have a little bit more of a sweeter, sometimes lemonade-y flavor profile to it, but a very petrol smelling nose. And the Pinot Blanc actually is one of those grape varietals that has a nice minerality to it to balance everything out. So blending all those together actually creates something super beautiful and delicious. So there you go, that's what's in your glass. Thank you. Domaine Danielle and Laurent Chardonnay. This is actually coming from the vineyard that you can see mostly around you here. This particular section of the vineyard is further up the hill, blocked by a bunch of trees, so I won't even make you try to see it. It is kind of in a little bit of a cold spot, and it's only about 2 acres worth of Chardonnay. And even then, that's kind of a little bit of a situation, because my father actually has done a field blend of a couple of different clonal varieties of Chardonnay. There's Dijon, there's a little bit of a heritage clone that's actually called a 95 Chardonnay clone, and that's from Burgundy. A Muscat clone, actually. So it has a Chardonnay grape top, but then a Muscat root bottom, actually, which actually, funny enough, gives it a little bit more of like a wildly enough, a little bit more of a like rounder mouthfeel to the flavor profile of the wine, and that's just something that my dad always looks for in Chardonnay. He likes wines that have a little bit more of a rounder mouthfeel and a little bit more of a balance to it, so that's why he creates this Chardonnay. It's a little bit again, different to some other Chardonnays. This touches about 21% French New Oak when we do both barrel aging and barrel fermentation. And yeah, it's a very delicious glass of Chardonnay that does have a little bit of like that sort of apricot flavor profile to it, a little bit of like a lemony underbase with just like that little final kick of like a caramel vanilla finish. So there you go, that's a Chardonnay. Our true estate vineyard is known as Domaine Danielle Laurent, meaning owned by Danielle and Laurent, being my mother and my father. So anyway, side tangent on that vineyard. That's the vineyard you see around here. This vineyard was the vineyard that I was originally talking about earlier, the one that's planted in 1971. It's actually one of the largest vineyards in the Willamette Valley. It has currently about 200 acres worth of planted vines. Is our 2022 Shea Vineyard Pinot Noir for you guys. Shea is actually the vineyard that borders our property. The original owner, actually who's still the owner, Dick Shea, greeted us when we first bought our property in 2000 with a property fire, actually. That's the fun story I always tell. Long story short, at the time you were still allowed to use flare guns to hunt turkey vultures. And so, yeah, he was shooting at a flare gun at turkey vultures, and obviously his section of vineyard, well, not actually the vineyard itself, but a small part in his vineyard caught on fire. Thankfully, no one was hurt, no vines were damaged, everyone was fine. But we always make the joke of anytime people say they're going to Shea Vineyard afterwards, I always say like, hey, tell Dick thanks for the property fire, just for funsies. But obviously this is the same AVA and it is the same soil type. We're both Willamette soil type and we're both in the Yamhill Carlton AVA, which generally speaking, here, for show, does actually have a little bit more of a darker fruit flavor profile to it, or more of a red fruit flavor profile to it, and a little bit more of a spiciness to it. Personally, I find the main differences between our estate vineyard being that our vineyard is a little bit more of a sun-soaked spot in the valley versus their vineyard, which is kind of in a little bit of a bowl shape, which makes it a little bit of a cooler spot in the valley, actually creates a little bit more of this interesting, like, they have a little bit more of a raspberry tartness to it again, and a little bit of that like white pepper, bay leaf interestingness that kind of settles out throughout the time, but I think it's really delicious. Versus the DDL vineyard, shorthand, Domaine Danielle Laurent, has a little bit more of a like darker blackberry, black currant, some interesting minerality to it that's kind of little like wet stones, wet rocks, things like that, and a little bit more of like a blacker pepper, a little slight touch more cinnamon and clove spice to it. So there you go. The density in our planting. We plant our vineyards a little bit closer together. Hi there, I'll be right with you guys. And because of that, we actually create a little bit more of a fight between the vines, which makes them have to grow stronger and deeper into the ground to get more of that interesting minerality, versus Shea actually plants theirs at exactly a meter apart. And so because of that slight less dense planting, it creates a little bit more of a, lighter flavor profile to it. It's a little bit more interesting.
Okay, how much oak and how much aging?
Yes, this one it's about 24% French New Oak actually, and it is aged for 18 months. For you guys, this is our 2022 Prince Hill Pinot Noir for you guys to try today. Prince Hill is actually a vineyard that my father and Dick Erath collaborated on, fun fact. More or less, that Dick Erath, who was kind of known as one of those like pop-up Pinot figures out here in the Willamette Valley, he wanted to start a vineyard and, create something interesting. And my father at the time was kind of more or less one of the guys who knew the most actually about the different clones that you should plant out here, and was the one who was the most well-versed in regards to like clonal experiments. And so they decided to work together and collaborate and created the Prince Hill Vineyard. But the story goes actually is that unfortunately for both of them, they're terrible at naming things. So, and that's actually my name included. My mom created my name. The only thing my dad added to it was actually the accent over the E. So, fun little fact there. But yeah, basically, when they were creating Prince Hill, they were trying to figure out what to call it. And they knew it was in the Dundee Hills, so they figured they would maybe add Hild in the name somewhere. But they were just thinking about it and thinking about it, and they couldn't really figure out what they wanted to do. And so, finally, Dick Erath asked his oldest son, he said, hey, what artists are you into right now? What are you into these days? Like, they decided to name the vineyard after the formerly known as Prince. So that's why it's called Prince Hill. But yeah, actually, and unfortunately, because Prince Vineyard actually got bought up by a California company, they are actually no longer selling these grapes to anybody in the valley. So they're hoarding them all for themselves. So this is actually the last vintage of Prince Hill that we will have, unfortunately. I love the Prince Hill. Again, in the Dundee Hill, or it's in the McMinnville Dundee Hills AVA. Generally speaking, that means it's going to have a little bit more of a volcanic soil type, which leads to a little bit more of a silky minerality to it. However, this particular vineyard I find has a little bit more of a darker fruit flavor profile to it. It's very tart, very fruit forward. Sometimes I get a little bit of raspberry beret in there. Thank you. I was gonna say holding for the jokes. Thank you. Sorry, that's my 5 minutes of fame. Very nice spiciness to it. It's very big. It's very bold, but it's very juicy as well. So this one is going to be about 16% French New Oak, and it is actually also 16 months in barrel.
Okay.
There you go. 16.
Right.
There
Thank
you go.
you.
Yeah, enjoy, you guys.